Welcome back to Nurse Franny. Today we're gonna now we're gonna cover joints. So we covered bone tissue, and we're still getting ready for a quiz that's gonna cover bone tissue and joints or articulations. So first, we're gonna describe what a joint is. Okay. So the first thing is, what is a joint or an articulation? So it is a connective tissue. So I'm going to put here connective tissue that encloses a cavity and retains the fluid. Okay. So comma, encloses a cavity and retains fluid. And we have four major joint categories. So four major joint categories. First one, I'm going to put number 1 here, bony joint. I'm just going to put JT. Number 2, fibrous joint. Number 3, cartilaginous joint. Number 4, we have synovial joints. Okay. Now we're going to talk about bony joint. A bony joint, it has a synonym. It's synostosis. So there's no movement in a bony joint. Absolutely no movement. That means that it is synarthroidal. Right? No movement. So remember, an immovable joint and it's formed when the gap between two bones ossifies and becomes one bone. Okay? So it's formed when the gap between two bones ossifies and becomes one bone. And you might see this, and let me see if I could do somewhat of a drawing here. So let's just make believe that this, let's just make believe that this is your coccyx. Horrible drawing of the coccyx, by the way. And it's split. Here, and here. Once this bone actually ossifies and it goes from these sections into just one solid bone, it becomes these little joints here become bony joints. Okay, so that's that. So I'm going to exit out of there and just make believe that I explained that. Now let's talk about fibrous joint. So the fibrous joint, also called synarthrosis, it is actually a synarthroidal joint. Sorry, synarthroidal joint. And it's actually a point at which adjacent bones are bound by collagen fibers that emerge from one bone and penetrate another. Okay? And an example, and a choice, so we're just going to put, just to jog your memory, adjacent bones, comma, bound by fibers, emerge from one, comma, penetrate other. And a good example would be the radius and the ulna. Sorry about that. Horrible, horrible bone, I know. Let's just make believe that that is, so this is the, let's just say that this over here is the radius, and this bad boy over here is the ulna. The membranes inside right here, coming from one bone and penetrating the other, that is your fibrous joint, your synarthrosis, your synarthrodial joint. Okay, so you have your adjacent bones, and they're bound by these fibers, right, creating that joint. So let's exit out of here. All right. There's also another example, and it's with your periodontal joints. It's these ligaments that, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Sorry, getting ahead of ourselves. So there are three kinds of fibrous joints. All right, this is what I was talking about before. So three kinds of fibrous joints. Number one, we have our sutures. Number two, we have our gomphoses. Number three are syndesmoses. Okay? The drawing that I just finished with the radius and the ulna, and your tibia and your fibula, that's an example of syndesmoses. An example of sutures, let's see, I'm going to draw, okay, so this is your calvaria, right? Your cap, your skull cap. Yes, it is a horrible drawing, I understand. But these little sutures, okay, all right, inside right here, inside the sutures are traces, all right, you can find fibrous joints. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a little square here. I'm going to put it right here. This is just zooming the suture, and it's actually something like this. And then here you have your sutures, okay? And remember, when you're an infant, you have your fontanelles, and it's that soft part on your skull. Then they become very, small, and now you have your sutures. We had gomphoses, and you can actually see gomphoses, your periodontal, they're found in the alveoli. And I'm going to try to draw that for you too. So, if these are your gums, right? Oops. Horrible. What am I doing? So if those are your gums, here's your tooth. Right here, your gomphoses, right there. All right, and so we saw our sutures, we saw our gomphoses, and we already saw our syndesmoses, which is that interosseous membrane between these bones right here, radius and ulna, and the tibia and the fibula. It's like a webbing, so to speak. Now, we have to understand that our sutures are actually slightly movable fibrous joints that bind the skull. And the gomphoses are also slightly movable. They're found in the alveoli, right? So gomphoses, think about your gums. Your syndesmoses, is that interosseous membrane. And the periodontal ligament is tooth to bone. So I'm just gonna write it right here. Periodontal ligament, LIG, is tooth to bone. Now let's talk about our cartilaginous joints. Cartilaginous joints. These are actually amphiarthrosis, okay? Amphiarthrosis. Amphiarthrosis. And these are actually two bones that are linked by cartilage. And there are two types, okay? So two types. The first one is synchondroses. Synchondroses. And the second one, symphysis. Symphyses. We're still on the topic, so we're going to go straight with synchondroses. So synchondroses, these are bones joined by hyaline cartilage. It's a temporary joint in the epiphyseal plate, okay? So bones joined by hyaline cartilage, okay? And it's a temporary joint in the epiphyseal plate. The next one, symphyses. Your symphyses, and we're already tired of talking about this one. These are between your discs and your pubis symphysis. Jesus Christ. Symphysis. Oh my God. Symphysis. Okay, so it's really good to know where to find that type, of cartilaginous joints. We have our synovial joints. All right, now the synovial joints are actually diarthrosis or diarthrodial joints. Okay, so diarthroses or diarthrodial joint. Sorry. Now, in this one, we actually have two bones that are separated by a space called the joint cavity. Okay, so two bones separated by a space called the joint cavity. And it's good to know what a joint cavity is. A joint or articular cavity separates articular surfaces. It separates articular surfaces. Okay, that's good to know. We talked about where does fibrocartilage grow, but I guess we could save that for the next video. All right, so for now, we looked at a couple of things here. Joints. What is a joint? It's a connective tissue that encloses a cavity and retains fluid. There are four major joint categories. We haven't hit synovial joint yet, but we might actually do after this summary. So a bony joint or synostosis, there's no movement. It's a synostotial, an immovable joint. It's formed when the gap between two bones ossifies and becomes one bone. You see this little tornado-looking thing? I thought that looked like the coccyx. Couple of parts, fused, now one bone. So it becomes a bony joint. Fibrous joint or synarthrosis. It's a synarthroidal joint. Adjacent bones bound by fibers emerge from one and penetrate the other. It emerges from one bone and penetrates another bone, like the interosseous membrane between the radius and the ulna. Three kinds of fibrous joints: sutures, gomphoses, and syndesmoses. Your sutures, you find them in the skull. I did this green square on the between the parietal and the occipital bone. We see on the right where you can see the joint on the sutures, the fibrous joint. The gomphoses, it's just, tooth to bone. Gums, gomphoses, periodontal ligament that attaches tooth to bone. Your teeth are not bone, by the way. Syndesmoses, we talked about that, sorry. That's radius between the radius and ulna, between the tibia and the fibula. So check. Cartilaginous joint or amphiarthrosis. Those are the synchondroses and the symphyses. These are, I would say, slightly movable. The synchondroses, they're bones joined by hyaline cartilage, temporary joint in the epiphyseal plate. The symphyses, just between discs and the pubic symphysis. The synovial joints, diarthroses or diarthroidal joint. They're two bones separated by a space called a joint cavity. You have a joint cavity which separates articular surfaces. All right, so what else can we learn? Let's stay tuned for the second part of the joint video.